Right. Hello and welcome everybody to the Korea TESOL International Conference and to this session entitled The Power of Collaboration, Building Networks and Connecting Educators. It's my great pleasure to welcome our presenter, our invited speaker, Grazzia Mendoza. She is an education specialist at USAID Honduras. With extensive experience in education. She also manages and designs education projects for the Ministry of Education, and she holds an MED in international education and an MA in TESOL. So we're definitely in for a treat, I think, today with this presentation. All right, Grazzia, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Garth. Thank you, everybody, for being here on a Saturday morning to engage in professional development. That is always something important to do. I'm going to talk today a little bit, and I want to say before I start, thank you to the organizing team for a magnificent conference. I have felt welcome from the very beginning. I want to give a shout out to David Schaefer. He has been amazing at getting speakers engaged, so shout out for him. And today I'm going to talk, like Garth said, about the power of collaboration, building networks, and connecting educators. And the way I'm going to go about this presentation is tell you a little bit about the research that's out there on educator networks, then why you should join a network, how networks support teachers, how networks promote leadership, and then I'm going to give you some examples from the field, from my experience, and from different networks I am part of in terms of leadership and how to empower others in becoming leaders within their own context. So let's start with the research. And there is a lot of research out there that talks about how networks affect educators' growth or their belief or their attitudes and even their practice. In what researchers have studied, they have found that there is an influence on how they perform in their classroom, but there's also an influence on how change can be brought into the context of the teaching practice. There's also a little bit of research and studies on how having access to an educator networks provides spaces for teachers to have experts that are at different levels of expertise and how attitudes and beliefs change depending on those levels of expertise. And here, this is to say that it really, and sometimes when we have novice teachers and we have veteran teachers, there's this notion that we always listen to the veteran teacher and then the novice teacher, we're going to teach the novice teacher. And that's from the research that says it's not necessarily true. There are different things for which we connect with the different teachers depending on the level of expertise. And for example, when we talked about how teachers engage with more experienced teachers, it is said that we look for them for advice because of the experience that they have had. We look for them for that historical knowledge that they bring and how the different models, the different trends of education have changed. So we look for them for that expert advice. When we engage with novice teachers for the support within an educator network, then we look for their advice in terms of creativity and innovation in that fresh outlook and that fresh perspective that they bring. And then you have your mid-level, not too senior, not too junior expertise of teachers that bring also innovation and that different experiences, expertise, and they have in the classroom. In the different studies that I was looking at when developing this session, it was there were several studies that pointed towards the fact that having teachers engage in educator networks had an impact in the performance of the students. And sometimes we might think, well, if a teacher is engaged in an educator network, that the influence is the positive growth for the teacher. But in these studies, it shows that it actually has an influence, a positive influence in the performance of the students. This means that we want to have teachers become engaged in educator networks, because the positive outcome will be that we will have a positive influence in the growth of our students. And it depends on where the study is developed, and it varies depending on those contexts. So it will be different on how it looks in more developed countries and then in low income countries. But the conclusion from the research is that educator networks are beneficial, and they promote empowerment, enhancing skills, building competences, and creating that sense of somebody that is supporting me and that understands what I am going through. That there is that understanding that I'm facing these challenges, and that somebody else, somewhere else, is also facing those challenges, and maybe has a solution or has a way to mitigate the situation. So in all of those studies, the conclusion is the same. The educator networks is important. And there are different lessons that researchers have learned from the studies, and it's that teachers usually might not seek the advice when we look at the levels in the administration. They might not seek advice for high level administration, but they would seek advice from their peers. And we see that with our students as well, right? When we pair our students in groups, they're more likely to ask questions to their own peers than they would ask the teacher, for example. So it's the same thing for us as teachers. Another lesson is also that depending on the leadership position that the person in the educator network has, that would be where the advice would be most sought. So if you have somebody that has a lot of experience, you usually go to that person, right? But in that engagement, what people are seeking is a sort of mentorship. And how do I get to be in the same leadership position that you are, and seeking that advice, right? And as I was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to do with whether you're a novice or mid or senior level teacher. It has to do with what you bring to the conversation. And also, there was another lesson that I found interesting, and it was that usually when you engage in educator networks, it is something it is with someone that you find that you are relatable with, that you can connect with, that shares your same values, that shares your same ideas. And that has positive aspects, but it also has some setbacks in the fact that if you're always engaging with people with your same perspectives, then you're going to be closing your mind and not be open sometimes to broader perspectives, right? So when we engage in educator networks, we need to make sure that we're diversifying our engagement in those educator networks. And finally, is that teachers who are working in isolation are less likely to bring innovation to the classroom. And if a teacher is usually on their own and doing their own thing and not engaging with others, it's more likely that they're not going to bring innovation to the classroom. So those were some of the lessons that have been learned. Now, how do the networks support the teachers? Well, I have mentioned some of those aspects. Well, it supports the adoption of new programs and practices. And if an institution is enticing teachers to become part of educator networks, it is more likely that they will be less reticent to change, and they will be more open to have changes. Now, we all know that change is difficult, and whenever something is changing, we'll get a little bit uncomfortable, right? People don't always embrace change very quickly. But being part of a network that supports teachers makes those changes. So administrators need to be a little bit smarter and make sure that the teachers are engaging in educator networks, because then when they try to promote change, they can have the buy-in from the whole group, right? It is also a way to target resources strategically, because you have people within that educator network that are experts in certain areas. And then you can have them bring that expertise and share it with the rest and create those professional. We always have institutions complain that they don't have enough funds for professional development. If you have a support network, an educator network, then it is possible to bring those resources and have the expertise of the people available to have that sharing experience of expertise. It is also a way to take advantage of those teachers who are leaders and who have ideas that are innovative and that we want their help to promote change and to create desired change, because they have the knowledge from the context and they know what needs to be changed and what needs to be done. So this network of teachers become a support for administrators, right? And then it helps everybody work more strategically, smarter, and not necessarily harder, because everybody is working as a team, and bringing that collaboration really makes a difference in how you work with other people as a team, because you're all working towards the same goal and towards finding solutions for the challenges of your particular context. Then, why should people join a network? Well, it helps us improve our skills and improve our knowledge in different areas. And depending on the different types of networks that you are a part of, that will look different, right? So you can be part of a network within a professional association, like TESOL, for example. Or you could be part of a network of public school teachers, and that will bring the amount of skills and knowledge and expertise. And it depends on where you are engaging, that will bring different skills and different. And for example, 5 years ago that I changed jobs, I went into the area of development in education. And because I have engaged with other networks and with other educators at a different level, it has developed my skills for negotiation, for example, for mediation, for establishing ways in which to avoid conflict and to influence policy at the government level. So depending on how you engage within a network as an educator, that's the benefit that it's gonna bring for education in the context where you are. It also helps you reignite your motivation and purpose. And another personal example that I have from this is in 2018, our local affiliate in Honduras, we had a big conference, and we had around 1,000 teachers from all over the country that attended the conference. And we had presenters from all over the world, but we specifically had around 30 presenters from all Latin America and the Caribbean. And they were coming from other affiliates, from other local TESOL affiliates, from other affiliates from the region, sorry. And some of them had been working, or there were had been for like 40 years, 34 years. And we were just a recent association that was like 4 years old. And because we were doing different things and different ways to address things, some of those leaders from the association said, you know what, I was about to leave my association in my country, but after seeing the way that you're doing things here, and because we are part of this Latin American network that we are involved in, I think I'm going to go back, and I have new ideas to go back and implement in my local affiliate. So being part of a network is going to keep you motivated and find that sense of purpose that educators need, right? And let us move away from that burnout in which we usually are, because we're doing the same thing over and over and over. So being part of a network allows you to disengage a little bit from the routine of the classroom and embarking new projects and do different things that actually motivate you to continue what you're doing in the classroom. It also helps you generate solutions with like-minded peers. Another example is from the network that we have in the Latin American and the Caribbean. We come up with projects, we come up with ideas. For example, our latest project is engaging women, empowering women to develop their skills to present at national and international conferences. So we find that there's a need to support women in this area. So we have connected with Equal Voices in ELT, and we have worked on generating a solution to have more women be presenters at our conferences. So that's a way to find a situation that we have and find a solution for that. And that is because we are part of an educator network. It also, if you have ideas for change, that sometimes you have those ideas by yourself, when you are part of an educator network, because you have the support of others that might share that same idea and that same need for change, then you might think of ways to actually implement your idea. And usually us as educators, we have tons of ideas on how things should work, but sometimes we don't have enough support. So an educator network, building a connection, building a bridge, and it doesn't have to be only a network from your country. It can be a network like I'm telling you, this network that we have with the Latin American region, where we are teachers from all over Latin America and the Caribbean that engage in projects together and make changes that are useful for our own context in our own countries. And it also, something that people might think, oh yeah, that's important, is find future work opportunities. Like in the group that we have, we usually share when there are opportunities for international teachers. We say there's an opportunity for an international teacher, so whoever wants to work abroad, there's this opportunity, you can apply. And for example, in my case, what has happened is I have been supporting teachers in a master's program in Dominican Republic, and I'm going to start teaching in a master's program in Nicaragua. I'm going to do that remotely, but this is because I am part of this education network, and I was not necessarily looking for a job, but they said, would you like to do this and support our university in that? So that's what happened. So depending on what you're looking for in a network, that's what you can get from the possibility of being part of a group of educators. Now, how do they promote leadership? Well, they are essential. And like I was telling you, there are ways in which we create mentorship programs. And sometimes those mentorship programs are very intentional, very systematic, and very directed and oriented by a set of guidelines. Or it can be a natural mentorship situation in which somebody just asks you for advice one time and you suddenly engage in a mentorship relationship, which is good because if you are a leader within your own context, you are helping new generations become leaders. And then you have that pipeline succession of leadership, which we need, right, in our context as educators. Also in research, it says that whenever you engage educators that are at different levels of expertise, they can each bring ideas or innovation to address the challenges that are happening and that are occurring. For example, within TESOL International Association, we have the Leadership Mentorship Certificate Program, where experienced leaders of the association engaged with junior or mid-level teachers and create research together, develop research together, write books, edit articles, engage in presentation skills. So it depends on what you're doing. So it helps create that leadership. And this mentor in turn, this mentee in turn, later on will become a mentor. Also, it helps when teachers have someone to look for that understands their needs, that they have gone through the same thing, and they see that they can overcome the challenge. And it's also a matter of representation, right? Representation, and that would vary depending on where you are. When I think about my context in Honduras, our public school teachers sometimes are lacking resources to have access to opportunities because most of the opportunities in our country are for private school teachers. And so what we need to do in having an educator network and having the possibility, for example, our local affiliate in Honduras is having come up with projects and giving them the opportunity to have access to things that if they were not part of a network, if they were not part of the association, they would not have access otherwise. So being intentional on how we bring representation. So it's good that we have representation from the private school teachers, but we want to have representation from the public school teachers as well, because they have a different set of challenges, right? And we need to be aware of those, and we need to help them mitigate and solve and come up with solutions for them to change the context in which they are teaching, and to create a positive situation. And then, as we were saying, create an opportunity for their students to perform better. So private school students, they perform really well because they have access to all the opportunities. How do we do the same for public school teachers? And we can do that through the educator network and what we bring as a local association. Now, so I've told you about the research. I told you why. I've given you some examples of things. Now I'm going to tell you what you can do. And this depends on your interest. And these are only some examples. And I will give you some of the things, I will tell you some of the things that have worked in my context. And then you can think of ways to adapt them to your own context. Pedagogical circles. So we have a project with the Ministry of Education that works in supporting teachers to improve the reading of and writing of learners in Spanish, for the Spanish subject, right? And the way that we are reaching with this project around 15,000 classroom teachers from the public school. And what we have found important for them is to have a space to share about pedagogy and methodology, which is usually something that they don't have enough professional development in, because we don't have in Honduras yet an ongoing professional development program. But we have found that creating a network through pedagogical circles has helped them exchange ideas and then take them back to the classroom, see what works for them, and then bring their experiences back, and that continuous space for sharing. And that's specifically for pedagogy and methodology. Then we have done research circles, because we want to make sure that in Central America, especially, research is lacking. We don't have enough researchers. We don't have enough academics producing research, and not enough research for the teaching of English, for ELT. So we create research circles and begin by letting teachers know that they can become researchers too, that they don't need to only be practitioners, and it's not bad to be only a practitioner, but that it is important that they engage in research, because they have so much to give and so much to offer. And we engage them in learning about research, reading research, finding out what research is about the field. So there are those conversations. That's another network. Then we have collaborative circles, and collaborative circles are open to different topics and different things. It can be a space to discuss classroom management, or to discuss time management. Some people would say time management, that's something easy to do. Not always. People have trouble with time management, and there are many time management skills that we can learn through a collaborative circle. And that's like the simple things that you can do. There are bigger things that you can do, like having a collaborative project in evaluation, for example, or ongoing assessment. So it depends on the interest of the people within that circle. Idea hubs. We have our technological university in the country brings entrepreneurs, or brings young entrepreneurs or young academics, and groups them, and they come up with technology on how to address the issues of education, how to bring more technology to the classroom with limited resources in low-income countries. So we have people with a lot of ideas and innovation in idea hubs, bringing ideas, seeking funding for that, and making sure that their ideas are funded so that they can be scaled up. And then social media. Now, social media, depending on how it is used, right? It can be for the good or not so good. But in my experience, for example, we have found And we have a WhatsApp group for teachers in Latin America and the Caribbean in the region. And we have found that it's engaging, not only for the academic part, not only for the research part, but for the empathy, for mental health, for socializing. That's important too, because as educators, we have that social emotional learning aspect. And you're going to have a session tomorrow from Luis Javier Penton on I think on that. And so it's so important, that social emotional aspect, the mental health aspect, your self-care, right? How do we also build those connections and make sure that our network is bringing that support? So social media is a good way to do that. And some people like sending an audio, or some people like texting, some people send images. It doesn't matter how you do it. You create the tone within that, but it's also available, and that allows you to reach a lot of people within your network and have those exchanges. Then TESOL International Association as a hub for professional networks. And the beauty of TESOL International is that we have spaces for members, right? For those who are members, but there are also for others who are not, who decide. I encourage you to become a member. I've been a member since 2007, and it has been the best decision I made in my life. But there are also spaces for non-members to engage in the My TESOL lounge. And there are also other affiliates like CoTESOL that can engage with other affiliates from the region. And maybe you choose to engage with affiliates in your part of the world, but it allows you to also engage with affiliates in other parts of the world and have that win-win situation where we learn from each other. So building those communities of practice and building those professional networks is very useful as well. So this was my commercial for TESOL International. And then important when we're thinking, and I think I'm doing well with time, we're going to have enough time for questions and conversation because I want to hear from you in terms of this topic. An important thing here is collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Remember, when we are a team, when we work together, we really achieve more. We move things forward in an easier manner. When we work in isolation, it's the effort of one person. When we work together, it's the effort of many. It's many people do it. And sometimes, and when I was working with my leadership coach, she would say, well, you have not a problem, but it was like something that I need to work on. It's like, I have so many ideas and and I don't have enough time to put those ideas into practice. So she would say, you have several networks. One thing that you can do is share one idea per network and leave that idea for others to take over and take to fruition. And I started doing that. And many ideas that I had that I didn't have the time to put into practice or implement, I have shared with the networks and have come to fruition in the last months. So that collaboration, that sharing really means that you see the change that you think is needed in the context where you are working. So it is so important to work together and collaborate. And I tell you a lot about this example of the region where we are. And I wrote an article for the Humanizing Language Teaching magazine about our Latin American and Caribbean network. And it's because it has been ongoing. It started in 1984, but it got like reactivated in 2010 when we had a conference in Cancun. And it has meant for us coming up with many projects benefiting teachers in our countries, sharing expertise. It's some of us are friends, like very good friends that support each other, but most of all, we are supporting each other and learning from the challenges from each of our countries and finding ways in which to address them, and being part of conferences and being part of events and activities within the countries that has really made us feel powerful among those educator networks. So there is power in educator networks. And if you are not part of one yet, if you're not part of CoTESOL, if you're not part of TESOL International or other type of educator network, I really encourage you to create your own, come up with your own idea, bring your interest with like-minded individuals, and really work towards bringing up that change that you want to see where you are in your context. So that is all I had for you today. I hope that you learned, like I told the other group in my other workshop, I hope that you learned at least one new thing today that you can take away and go back to your own context. Thank you for having me today. I am ready for conversation and questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Grazzia. That was superb, and definitely such an important topic as well. I'm sure we're going to get some interesting engagement. So anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? Any topic of discussion? Don't be shy.
You can open your microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about experiences in your context about educator networks, so that when I go to Korea next year, I know.
Such a brilliant presentation. You've left everybody speechless.
or people can write in the chat. When we're shy, we can write in the chat. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay.
I love your name. My sister's name is Rebecca too.
Oh, good. Plebiscito, right? My question is, do you find that older teachers who have, been in the profession for a longer time are very interested in these professional discussions, or are they more detached? In other words, the question is, do you see any trends by age?
So it depends, right? It depends on what stage in their teaching practice the teachers are. But I have found, and especially in different networks that I am a part of, I have found that more experienced teachers are very interested in sharing their knowledge. So they might not be in the educator network for the purpose of learning something new, maybe, although they will, of course, learn something new, but they are interested in sharing their knowledge, in sharing that legacy, right? That expertise that they already have, that historical information of how things have changed. So I have found when I engage with more experienced teachers that their mentorship is key. So I always like to engage with more experienced teachers because they have that mentoring aspect and it comes naturally to them. It's not forced because they want to share. So I have found that the engagement is different because the purpose will be different depending on their stage in their teaching practice.
If I can I just follow up on Rebecca's question, and sort of on that idea of age and maybe point in time when the teacher is teaching. It seems like when teachers begin, they're just trying to keep their head above water. They're just being bombarded with so much, and but that's also the time perhaps when they need that mentoring the most. So any ideas or suggestions on ways to access those people that need it the most when they're just trying to, stay above water? That's the...
I think creating the pedagogical circles, in our experience in Honduras, creating those pedagogical circles, creating those research circles has been helpful because they can engage with others and see, they are having the same issues as I have. They have the same challenges. So they come up with solutions. So that would be one way. Also, making sure that we have a support system for these teachers early on, right? Because we know not everybody now wants to become an educator, right? Because our profession is really hard and really needs commitment and passion and being dedicated. So if we can show them that yes, there's work, there's a lot of things that you need to do, but there are ways to do it without burning out, by being able to take care of yourself and understanding sometimes your limitations, but that you're going to build the skills to overcome those limitations. I think having those conversations as part of those, and it can be a self-care circle. It doesn't need to be methodology. It doesn't need to be, it can be self-care. And it's something really important because we need to touch on those social emotional aspects of the teachers in the teacher well-being. And like you were saying, especially novice teachers, they're getting, I have to hang in there for 1 year, for 2 years, right? So how do we do that? How do we develop those well-being teacher social emotional learning skills with them? I think creating those spaces is important. And I think Michael had a question here. Do you have any advice for how to convince administrators of the benefits? I would say point them to the research first. Oops, I had an electricity thing. I hope I'm there. Yes, I'm there. Pointing them to the research, letting them know that there's research out there that helps them understand that this is necessary. I would also say starting with a pilot. So when we started the pedagogical circles, the school directors were not very like, teachers are going to be wasting their time in those pedagogical circles. How much time away from the classroom will they be taking, right? But we showed them by piloting at the beginning some circles that it was useful, and this was having an impact in the students' performance in the classroom. So sometimes you have to point them to the research, sometimes you have to give them an example and model that for them, and then create that buy-in. And it's usually us as educators that have to create that buy-in from administrators, and not the other way around, that as maybe it should be, right? I hope I answered your questions. Yes, it is a tough sell. I know. I remember when I went, I many years ago when I went for the first time into higher education. I remember I was very young, and the administrator from that English program had been my teacher. So the other teachers would say, we continuously are only evaluating students. We have X number of hours, and 60% of that time we are giving quizzes and tests and oral evaluations. We're not teaching. The coordinator, can you do something? And I said, well, there's a strategy. You need to learn to read people. And with some people, it might just be a conversation. With other people, you might need to model. Now, with our coordinator in that program, what we needed to do is present a detailed plan. So that's what I did. So what I did is I tested things in my classroom first and see how those work. And then together as a group, we got together and we presented a detailed program and a proposal. And we said, this is what we see. We think that this is not working. We want to change it for this. And we have supporting data that it works because we have tried it. Would you be willing to give it a try for 1 trimester and see if it works for you? So because he had a detailed proposal, he had a plan, he had arguments that said that it worked, then he said, okay, let's try it for 1 trimester only. But then he kept it as the program continues. So it's how do we read our audience? What do they prefer, right? And I think it's part of that convincing and creating that buy-in.
You're answering these questions so completely and so well. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. There's good energy here. I can feel it. So it's like from the opening ceremony.
Energy is coming from you, I think.
No, from the opening ceremony, I could feel like I liked and I liked how they were explaining what you need to expect, what you need to do with the platform, what you should expect. I like that. So it's like it gives good energy. So
that's the one thing TESOL has going for it in terms of the cooperation and collaboration. we are definitely a very supportive, helpful community. But I'm noticing that even though we have the support and the experience and all of that, there's a difficulty in engaging a lot of the younger educators and getting them on board.
Yeah. You know, one thing that we're doing at our local affiliate in Honduras and some others in the region, because we see that in what I was saying about that leadership succession pipeline, it's usually the older generations that are actively engaged as volunteers, and then the younger generations. And it's like, what are they looking for? And what we have found, particularly in Honduras, and it might be different for Korea, is we have found our teachers, younger teachers, are looking for opportunities for different study programs. So the way that we are engaging them is through the U.S. Embassy, through the State Department. We seek for them opportunities where they can apply for courses, be them virtual or in person, or for conferences in what they like. And we tell them, okay, we're going to recommend you for this opportunity. If you apply and get the opportunity, then you need to come back and share with the wider membership of the association. And you need to volunteer for at least 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, depends, right? So that is how we have tried to engage the teachers. We have just started with this project. I will tell you in a couple of years how it works out, but they seem to be more enthusiastic of being part of the affiliate. So at least right now, the enthusiasm is there. Let's hope that it remains for many years so that they can remain as volunteers. So I will tell you like in 4 years what happened.
All right. Oh, that sounds like an interesting way of doing it, offering them some connections to some professional development programs and certifications. Because we need to find ways to engage with the younger educators. The old guard are getting tired of shouldering all of the burden, so to speak.
Yes.
And that loop back part, that's really brilliant. You know, that they're taking this continuing education or education courses, and that then you take the course, and we hope that you will then bring that back, and then they feel that ownership, and then that sort of just it trickles on up, I guess, to them becoming the new leaders. I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. And we do a lot of social media because, you know, with younger generations, they like to see themselves in social media. So whenever somebody gets the scholarship or something, we just send it on social media and we say, join us in congratulating such and such because she became part of this or he became part of this. And they like that. So that's a good thing.
Are there any more questions? Anybody want to share some of their experiences in terms of collaboration, maybe from a different part of the world?
I am fortunate enough to be working with a person from Argentina, and I'm from the US. And then we have a colleague from Cyprus. And so it's quite a wonderful thing. Oh, yes, there's another colleague from the United Arab Emirates. So it's working in squares and triangles and circles. And I find it very, very helpful. And we never get to see each other in person, but you know, Zoom is very helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We started just recently our Equal Voices in ELT LAC TESOL mentorship program. So we have mentees from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, Paraguay, and Venezuela. We have paired them with mentors from the UK, the US, Turkey, and Spain, and they are working on developing their skills to present at conferences, either online or in person. So by doing that, then what we are asking them after that is not only to participate in the conferences, but then to get a colleague to develop their skills too. So from mentees, they will become then mentors, and they will lead other women to do the same thing. So it's another way to go and have that support network that we need as educators to develop X skills, right?
I think that's also important in terms of encouraging the next generation of educators to further educate themselves and engage in professional development to maintain or achieve some standards of education. I think you're killing many birds with one stone there, which is the best way to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Because they're then going to create their own educator networks, right? For different purposes. Thank you, Greg. I love your photo, Greg.
If there aren't any more questions, if you haven't already, please pop into the Discord server. I've just shared the link there. If you have something you want to share, but you're too shy to do it now, you can pop over to the server. There is a channel there where you can exchange questions and answers and continue the discussion. And we encourage you all to continue these discussions. We don't want them to stop with the sessions and with the conference. We're hoping everybody will be able to take something useful away from this.
Could you give
Thank you
us
for having me.
could you give us an email or
Yes.
something where we can, or is it in the
Yeah.
program?
I don't know if it's in the program, but I just wrote it in the chat, and I also will upload my presentation to the presentation section, so it's going to be there as well. But
Great.
Thank you very much, Grazzia. That was superb and a very important topic, I think. Also one that's often overlooked. The value of this collaboration and these networks is immeasurable. Especially when we moved over from face-to-face to online. I mean, without the support structures that existed out there, I think a lot of educators and education systems would have suffered greatly. So it's an incredibly important topic, and it's important that we talk about it and make it adaptive. So thank you very much for that.
agree. Thank you for having me. It has been great. I'm going to continue enjoying the other presentations now that mine are done.
Wonderful. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.